Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And today in the co-captain's chair, of course, you know him from In the Prog Seat and for Fusion Friday, Mr. George Lamie from the Windy City of Chicago. What's up, George?
Go on, Pete.
You ready for this impossible assignment, my friend?
Yeah, I got djent coming out my ears.
Of course, we're going to rank the catalog of animals as leaders. We've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks. I don't know about you, George, but I have been, all right, so let me back up a little bit. So I am fairly new to this band. This is one of those groups that I've always been aware of, but you can only listen to so many bands, and I just never explored their music. I've been hearing people talk about them for years and years and years. I'm you know, knowledgeable of the virtuosity of these guys, especially Tosin on guitar, who's just incredible. You can see all sorts of YouTube videos on this cat playing just some amazing shit. But I never bought any of their albums, and to my knowledge, I never reviewed any of them either, which that's kind of surprising because I know like they were on Prosthetic Records originally, and we always reviewed prosthetic stuff on the webzine. So to my knowledge, I just never really explored their music. And then we've had a lot of people ask about them, and George is even saying, hey, you ever consider Animals as Leaders? And I'm like, all right, I know this is a band I should be into. So I went and picked up all their albums a couple of months back, and I've been listening to them quite a bit, especially over the last couple of weeks. And like over the last week, I've been listening to them exclusively at the gym and in the car. And because you know what? Like when I'm here working during the day, you can't have Animals as Leaders on as background music. You can't, because you're trying to concentrate on something else. You're like, what did they just do there? What was that? It's very distracting. You have to like immerse yourself in this music. But at the same time, like 2 weeks straight of Animals as Leaders is exhausting because this is like dense, heavy, complicated. I don't even know what other adjectives to throw out there. It's just, it demands your full attention, and there's really nothing else like this, George. I mean, there are other bands who kind of dabble in this sort of thing. I don't think anybody does it like these guys. This is just otherworldly to me.
Yeah, there's bands that have taken a bite off of what they do, but they have their particular mix is their own, I think.
Yeah, it's like it's progressive metal, djent, fusion, prog, kind of electronic-y stuff. There's times like they don't really talk about much anymore, but you remember like maybe a decade ago there was this whole thing about like video game music, right? Video game metal, right? There's
Yeah.
little aspects of that as well, but it's just really tricky, complicated, but breathtakingly gorgeous music. At times pretty heavy, at times not. What do you call them? You mentioned djent before. Yes, certainly prog metally. There's certainly fusion in here. It's like when I listen to this band, I hear like Dream Theater, Meshuggah, 80s King Crimson, and a whole bunch of other shit, Frank Zappa, all this other weird stuff thrown into a blender, and boop, there you have Animals as Leaders. And it's like, it's really hard to get a firm grasp on. And at the same token, all five of these albums are dynamite. I've been like going crazy trying to figure out how to rank these, and after a while, it's just like, who cares, right? It's like I think it's just an example. It's just a great example to talk about some really good albums by a really great band. So with all that being said, we got 5 albums, 5 studio albums. We're gonna rank them as best we can in some kind of order. Like I said, none of them are bad, not even close. So I'm sure there's going to be people watching whose my number 5 is going to be their number 1, and vice versa, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
cool because there's no bad ones here. And I guarantee you, I'm sure both of our rating or rankings is going to be completely different, and that's okay because no bad albums. They're all great to mind blowing. So with that being said, I'll have George kick us off with his number 5. Good luck.
Yeah, I like to, and when I'm in the midst of one of these ranking shows, I like to go to Rate Your Music and read the ratings and the reviews just to see where the people stand, and talking about, oh, your favorite might be someone's least favorite. That's me for this one. My number 5 is The Joy of Motion, which is the highest rated one on Rate Your Music. This is the only one I don't own. I just got files of this one. This is the one I hadn't heard before you said let's do this ranking.
Yeah.
Um, Cascade is an amazing opener. You're going to hear a lot about amazing openers, I think, as we go through these. At least you will for me. Probably Pete too. Um, Another Year is kind of a different track for them. Like Mike Jacobs was mentioning me, he actually hears a little Wayne Krantz in that, and it's like, yeah, kind of like the picking style a little bit. I don't hear much fusion in these guys, but that, yeah, I can kind of hear that. The Woven Web's another favorite here. It, it ends up at 5 basically because this one just has a couple more songs that I'm a little bit indifferent to. Uh, Pretty much no bad ones, but I would say the other thing about it is it feels to me that it's mastered too hot. Production maybe is inconsistent with these guys. I feel I would put them with an outside producer at this point. It's probably a little bit echo chamber. They self-produce all their records. And this one feels just a little blary for me. So the smallest of margins, I put it at 5.
Yeah, some of their albums sound absolutely gorgeous from a production standpoint, and some, like you said, are a little hot. Yeah, but we're splitting hairs here, right? Where we're looking at ways to put them lower in the ranking. It's my number 5 as well. Their third album. You really can't fault it for anything. You mentioned Another Year, which is a little laid back, almost kind of jazzy. Air Chrysalis also is a little mellow. I think for me, and I like both those songs, but those two tracks I think are very different from what they've done on other albums. This album also, from like the guitars and bass on this album, and we might as well talk about the lineup, right? So Tosin Abasi on guitars, Javier Reyes on rhythm guitar, and you got Matt Gasta on drums. Also, you got Misha Mansour and Adam Getgood up, who play bass. Misha has done some work with the band early on, help with production, things like that. So some of the albums have bass, some it's mostly the 7-string guitar. It's kind of hard to tell because most of their shit has a pretty big bottom end. But what I was going to say for this album, they seem to be going a little bit overboard with the kind of tapping stuff for me. Just a little bit. It's not much of a distraction, but it seemed, and what they're doing is next level stuff. To me, it just feels like it might be a little too much. But there's some, Mind Spun is amazing. Tooth and Claw is heavy, complex, complete ripper. Paramexer's got some really nice acoustic playing on. I think this one might be their most varied. There's a lot of different stuff on here, but like you mentioned, there's a couple of tracks that I like, I don't love. So for me, it's almost like this one came in at number 5 by default. But I obviously you said on Rate Your Music, this is most people's number 1. I think for that reason, because it is so varied, and this is like next level virtuosity on here. But I love it. It's great. But I put it at number 5 just because, those couple things I mentioned. But I would not, if anybody said this is by far my favorite, yeah, cool. It's not far from mine. It's not far off. So
My number 4 is Weightless, 2011, second CD. In ways, I feel like this is maybe their cleanest mix. This is the only album with Neveen Copperweiss on drums, and his style is a little less dense than Matt Garska, so that could play into it. Seems like it breathes more. An Infinite Regressions, another killer opener. Odessa is fantastic. I think where this one falters is the shorter pieces on here. They have a tendency, a lot of the albums have like these little 1 and 2 minute things. They act like as a palate cleanser, which is not necessarily a bad thing considering how much of an assault this can be. But unfortunately, the ideas for that seem to be limited to Tosin playing clean tone stuff and maybe some electronic stuff. They get come at it from another angle. I think I would appreciate it a little bit more. But songs like Aspera and David, basically I'm waiting to get to the next song when those are on. So this 2 to 4 section, I was shuffling these around all week, and it was 2, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 today.
Yeah, it's my ranking could change tomorrow. So we're splitting hairs here on these. My number 4 is The Madness of Mehdi from 2016, 4th album. Okay, Abasi, Reyes, and Gasta is the trio here. I guess that's now the current and long lasting lineup, right? Again, another amazing opener, Arithmophobia, has this like huge bottom end and then these soaring guitar solos. To me, a song like that is kind of like if Meshuggah ever stopped singing and went fusion, but kept their kind of like their gentiness. That's what this would sound like. The bottom end is very, very similar in these two bands. Ectogenesis is very futuristic sounding. There's just like a futuristic slant to this album, which I think adds a little different flavor here. Cognitive Contortions is another one that's really complex, great stuff. Inner Assassins has some blazing but very melodic guitar solos there. I do want to mention that even though a lot of this stuff is very complicated and this weird kind of staccato, polyrhythmic bottom end and stuff, they add a lot of melody into these songs, which I think is really, really good. And I love the Glass Bridge. That's got a nice groove to it, just breathtaking melodies and guitar solos. And then, interestingly enough, and I don't know if you hear this, George, the Brain Dance, which is the second to last song. It's like, I think the longest track on the album. To me, sounds like a 2000s version of like the Dixie Dregs or the Steve Morse Band. It kind of has those weird little, kind of countrified melodies, but it's metal, it's modern, and just I don't know. Just I listen to that song and I'm like, oh, I could see the Dregs doing something like that if they got a little heavier, right? Or if Tosin joined the Dregs, and that's what they would do. But and he rules. Let me tell you, what a player this guy is. Just I can only imagine like what audiences on this latest Dream Theater tour were going through to see like Dream Theater, Animals as Leaders, and Devin Townsend bang, bang, bang every single night, man. That's pretty intense. It's like it's almost like Animals as Leaders on a Dream Theater bill. That's way too much, right? Because we know what it's like to sit through a Dream Theater concert. That in itself is an assault, right? And I love them, but like you get done watching a 2.5-hour Dream Theater set, you go home and you're like, whew, that was great. But could you imagine like an hour-long Animals as Leaders set in addition to that? But yeah, great album. Madness of Many. I know a lot of people love this one too, and as do I, but that's my number 4.
That's my number 3. I had it up as number 2 as recently a couple days ago. I like the consistency of it.
Yeah.
But like you said, the first 2 tracks, especially Arithmophobia, that's in their top 5 songs to me. That's just really competitive. And Ectogenesis actually is the one that that bass line, it sounds like a legitimate bass on that song. And that groove, that sticks in your head once you take it off. And there's something about that groove, it's hypnotic.
Yeah.
And then you have a group of the next 4 or 5 tunes there that are all good, but a little amalgamous. They're all 4.5, 5.5 minutes, doing what they do well. So, it's a good listen, but maybe lacking in standout qualities. You got that, and then the last 2 songs, Brain Dance and Apeirophobia, he goes with the acoustic. For me, it's not what I want to hear them doing. I understand the desire to do it, to give some different corners to this stuff, but Apeirophobia especially doesn't quite do it for me. Also, the mix on this album I feel is a little murky. Again, it's not their sound from album to album is a little bit inconsistent, but really, this is just a really good record. I mean, this probably, if you like a record where you don't have to skip tunes,
yeah,
this maybe most consistent. So,
yep.
Madness of Many.
My number 3, I'm going to go with Weightless from God, terrible glare today. Well, you know what? I think all these covers are just like they don't really stand out all that much. Second album, great stuff on here. An Infinite Regression, it's pedal to the metal blazing. Again, these guys know how to kind of kick off an album with some great stuff. Somnarium's a good one. Good heavy riffs, nice kind of melodic, shreddy solos. Earth Departure is just completely nuts. And I love the title, but it's a fun song. Do Not Go Gently is fun, kind of just fusiony, genty romp. Just the arrangement's just absolutely sick. Cylindrical Sea's got some wild sweep picking from Tosin on it. To lead you to an overwhelming question, great prog metal. Title track is really gorgeous. I love it. It's really good. It's my number 3. Top 2. Here we go. We obviously have the same top 2, George. Let's see how it works.
What you said about the covers, I think, is worth saying. Is they don't seem to put a lot of effort into their aesthetic, their cover art, and
No,
maybe they do, and they just find the minimalism cool. I don't know, but to me, they could probably take a step up there. But
yeah,
small,
I would agree.
small thing, but
I guess they put it.
Number 2 is the debut. Again, this one a couple days ago was 4, then it was back to 2. I mean, it ends up being that 2 mostly because on the strength of the standout songs. The standout songs, Tempting Time. When it first came out in 2009, I was on it from the beginning. I was on some message board. This came out at the same time as Exvius record, which is another instrumental metal record. That one's more tech metal. This is is its own thing. I preferred this one because it was like more unique sounding to me. When that keyboard riff comes in the middle, it sounds so cool. It's almost like a sci-fi vibe. Really cool. Behaving Badly, that riff, the acoustic he plays, just some ripping stuff. Kafo is probably their most known viral kind of song. For pretty good reason. It's pretty insane. There's like 3 separate parts, and each one is great. It has a couple songs that not the greatest, but the strength of the good songs. I mean, it's just so good. Worth mentioning, it's got a drum machine on it, but it's pretty convincing. It's not the worst sounding drum machine as far as sound, and the programming from I think Misha Mansour does the programming on it. Not bad. I mean, he's not playing like crazy stuff that no one can play, but he's not making it boring either. So you kind of just fall into it and forget that it's a drum machine more than you can on most records. Yeah, just my number 2.
Yeah, I went back and forth with these, and ultimately I decided to go Parrhesia from 2022, their most recent album. Their shortest record, just barely over 35 minutes long, which is kind of weird. I like what you were talking about with the debut, and again, I think I've said the word a couple times already today. There's a futuristic kind of sci-fi sound to their music, which I think is kind of unique, and I think that sets them apart from a lot of other bands. But so here we have again Tosin, Javier, and Matt on this album. Conflict Cartography, blazing. I mean, right out of the gate, so melodic, it's so heavy. Monomyth is djenty and just kind of stop-start staccato crap. It's absolutely wacky. I love Red Miso, which again I think shows a tiny bit of their fusion side, but then it gets intense and heavy. And I love the light and shade in their music. They go from this like these quiet little interludes to this big bombastic stuff, and the polyrhythms and that 7-string guitar, the bass, or whatever the hell they're using, and all this intricate stuff. It's just really, really cool. God, how do you say it? Gestaltserfall, or however you say it. Gestaltserfall is amazing. I mean, you got soaring, melodic, beautiful guitar solos, and then those brutal, complex, bottom-heavy breakdowns. Just really, really cool. Microaggressions is just totally sick. And then Gordian Knot, I think, is just amazing. And I'm assuming that's kind of like an homage to the great band Gordian Knot, I would assume. If not, could be, right? Amazing album. Could have been my number 1. Was almost my number 1. And again, I'm just happy to be getting into this band, even though I'm late to the game with them. This would have, if I would have heard this in 2022, this would have definitely been on one of my favorite albums of the year, I think. But better late than never. I'll let George talk about it now.
Yeah, the way this I think came up was a guy mentioned in comments, when are you going to do an Animals as Leaders ranking? And I said, I'm not sure Pete's into them, and then you jumped in, but yeah. He said they've never been talked about on the channel, and I did have them on my list for last year.
Yeah.
For me, the strength of this album is they seem more confident now in the non-djenty riffs, the traditional prog metal riffs, and the quality of them seems to be much catchier here than the other albums. The djenty riffs on here are all incredible. I mean, It's a really good batch. We were talking about the art. That is an epic fail for a backup album. I mean, I know I'm old, but man, that's hard to read.
Yeah, that is. That's
That's like even pointless.
I mean, the whole thing is just kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
the inside's a little better, but conflict cartography again, another stellar opener.
yeah.
Monomyth, another great song. That was one of the couple. Matt Garska did playthroughs for some of this stuff. He did a playthrough for Monomyth and Gordian Knot. People just want to see how the hell he's doing what he's doing. This is the best drumming album for them. Garska, they took the most time with this one between albums. Is 6 years between this and
Yeah.
Madison. I think it kind of shows. And you mentioned the length. I think that's a big strength of this album. It's such an assault. You don't need 54 minutes. I think
No, you really
37
don't. Yeah.
minutes. 37 minutes plays pretty well. There's only one of those little palate cleanser type songs with Acai. I don't know how you say it. They seem to like to have these song titles that are hard to say. I'm not sure what that's about. But yeah, I mean, Thoughts and Prayers, another really good song, funny title. I just To me, if you're gonna get one of them, this is the one to get because they don't stray around with the little pieces. The riffs are catchy. You got the heaviness. This one's pretty much got it all. So that's why it's number one for me.
Yeah, and those are all the reasons why I almost had it at number one too. I think for me there were, and you mentioned it before, there are just some standout tracks on the debut that are so amazing, and I agree with you. I think that this is more compact and probably start to finish stronger, but
Yeah.
because of a handful of songs, I think I kind of that weighed very highly for me. So it's interesting when you look at like the history of this band, like. So Tosin was in this metalcore band named Reflux, who, to my knowledge, I've never listened to before. But they broke up, and the label really wanted him to do a solo album, and he felt very strongly about not doing a solo album. So he basically went and, went to a guitar school and learned some additional shit, and came back and said, "All right, I want to put together a band that would be kind of the similar vision to what I might have done with a solo career, but I want it to be a band." And here we have Animals as Leaders, right? Some great stuff on here. Again, this is not the classic lineup. So this is, like you mentioned, you got some drum machine programming on here. You got, Misha Mansour's on here, the guy named Vinny Vin on drums, whatever the fuck that is, right? Lots of flavors and textures on this album, which I really like. On Impulse is great. Tempting Time is just absolutely terrific. I love Sarai. I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful song. The rhythms on Behaving Badly are just killer, absolutely killer. And CAFO just destroys. I mean, the first time I listened to that song, I'm like, what did I just hear? I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. To me, this album and this band, but this album is so ahead of its time. And I think I said at the top of the show, but this is the first one I listened to also. To me, I hear this and I think like Discipline era King Crimson. I hear some Dream Theater stuff. I hear Meshuggah. I hear Frank Zappa. I hear all this other stuff, but it doesn't sound like any of that. They grab these little elements and add other stuff in, and out comes this brand new sound. It's mind blowing. I mean, this band is just mind blowing, but this is not like everyday listen stuff. Like, I think like now that I've been immersed myself in this catalog for the last couple of months, and even more so the last couple of weeks, I probably won't listen to these for a while. I need something a little similar. Like I need to go listen to like Master of Reality by Black Sabbath tomorrow or something. It's like I need like a little palate cleanser, because this stuff is just so demanding. It's just so complicated and so masterfully put together that you need a little slice of simplicity after this. So, but great catalog. I mean, I would think, George, right, if anybody really likes just intricately arranged music that's heavy but is melodic and gorgeous at the same time, and just loves virtuoso guitar playing, but likes, you have to like modern styles and things, right? Because this doesn't sound like anything from the 70s or the 80s for the most part. It's just it's very modern sounding and very thought-provoking, I guess. I mean, some people
you have to have some affection for extended range guitars, because there's a lot of them on here, and it's fatiguing for me. Like, by the time one of these albums is done, there's not going to be another one like that for a bit, but I do like it in little chunks. So
yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing stuff. And when I get done listening to any of these albums, I'm just kind of like, you're kind of exhausted, but you're just mesmerized by how uh just incredible it is to put together stuff like this. I mean, there's really nothing like it. And the virtuosity of the band is just crazy. And the techniques that are going on, it's just and it all makes sense, right? It just shouldn't, but it all makes sense. And to think that someone writes this stuff, I think is just even more mind-blowing. Because like I could never in a million years put together any song like anything on this album. Just wouldn't even.
I'm trying to put myself in Matt Garska's place where he gets the demos, or I don't know if they work it out in the practice room or he just gets demos. And I'm trying to come up with drum parts for this. I'm just like, how's he do it? It's like crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a good thing it's all instrumental too, because I couldn't picture vocals working with this at all.
No way.
No. And where do they go after Parrhesia now? I mean, that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Like, so now you're familiar with them. Tendency is to say, how could they be better? What would you do? What would you suggest that they do? I would say I'd like to hear a fourth voice in there somewhere. Not in the whole band, but like as a guest, maybe like a violin on a track, or a keyboard player with a lot of string patches, a solo a little bit, maybe like maybe Diego Tejeda. I think he would fit in. Have just a little something to set it apart, because as good as it is kind of an amalgamous discography. Like a lot of it is very similar. So you want to try and come up with different ways to stand out. Maybe something like that. And the outside producer, I still think is a good idea.
Yeah, I could see a Diego doing some stuff with these guys. I could see I could see Derek Sherinian maybe adding some interesting things here too. I think Jordan Lucas would be really cool to hear solo on a couple of these tracks too, because I just wonder if Derek's kind of wild style would be a little too much for these guys, whereas I think Jordan's nimbleness might fit really well with them. I don't know.
Derek might be a little too rock rootsy kind of. That's why I went with Diego, because he's into the modern stuff, so he knows the music basically.
Yeah. I don't know. Pretty cool though. I'm happy I took this dive. So there you have it, everybody. So if you're not already a fan of this band and you're trying to figure out where to start, take your pick.
Yeah,
there's no bad album here. We were splitting hairs for me. I would say most of these are pretty equal to each other. I think my 1 and 2 I think are just a little bit above the other 3, just by very minute reasons, or 4 minute reasons. But these are all excellent. And if you are a fan, rank them down in the comments below as you like them. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. They're all spectacular albums. So
we'll be told we're wrong, believe me.
Oh, I'm sure, but that's okay. That's totally fine. It's totally fine. There's no stinker album here, guys. So if you like one or more of these way more than the others, that's cool, right? They're all pretty spectacular. So let's see, what do we got coming up a week from today? So as George leaves the co-captain's chair for next week's show, Jamie Laszlo comes back in once again, and he and I will be ranking the catalog of these guys. So we got some little space rock and stoner metal coming up. Stoner rock, stoner metal. Monster Magnet will be a week from today, so stay tuned for that. And what comes up the week after that, I don't know yet, but there's lots happening. I know Lewis and I are supposed to rank the solo albums of Pete Townsend. That's coming up. Ryan Scow and I are going to rank the albums of Electric Wizard. Karen La Preziosa and I are going to rank the albums of Church of Misery. I'm going to rank the albums of Sly and the Family Stone, and there are a bunch of others that are in the works. So no shortage of ranking the album shows coming up. So stay tuned for whatever happens next. Well, next is Monster Magnet. What comes after that, we'll wait and see. But there's lots of stuff on the agenda. So we'll keep bringing it to you each and every Sunday. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. For George Lamie, I'm Pete Pardo. Stay tuned for the Hudson Valley Squares tomorrow. And until then, we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.